The lore behind the Miqo'te is some of the most detailed out of all the races. This video will be focusing on one of its primary aspects, that being the naming conventions used by its clans, the Seekers of the Sun and Keepers of the Moon. Let's begin with the Keepers of the Moon. The Keepers have ever been a nocturnal clan of the Miqo'te race. They flourish under a night sky, a trait which has aided them in being some of the most proficient hunters in Eorzea. Due to their hunting background, the Keepers don't establish large tribes or settlements. Instead, they live in smaller groups of up to 3 or 4 families. As a result, they never adopted the tribal letters like the Seekers did, but have their own naming system. An interesting fact, did you know that when the Miqo'te returned to Eorzea, most Keepers settled in the Black Shroud, as it was plentiful with game and its overgrowth better suited their nocturnal activities. The Keepers are primarily a matriarchal society, which is most evident in their names, which are passed down from the mother. A great example is one of the most popular Keepers, Zoe Alapo. Zoe is her given name, with Alapo being her mother's name passed down. Keeper females tend to have a simple naming system similar to other races. Zoe, who I just mentioned, and Nasu Mekaraka being another prime example. Where the Keepers are unique is in the naming of the males. Male Keepers born into a group are given names very similar to the females, a given first name and taking on their mother's surname, but with the notable exception that each male is given a suffix at the end of their given name to indicate the order in which they were born. Zaya Nelha is a great example, our friend who we met during the Black Mage job quests. Zai is his given name, with the A suffix being added to represent he is the firstborn male of his mother. A for the first son, 2 for the second, Li for third, Sai for fourth, Ra for fifth, for sixth, Wu for seventh, Ya for eighth, Z for ninth, and Tan for 10th. But it's rare for a Keeper mother to have more than 2 or 3 sons, even in a larger Keeper family, given the ratio of male to female in the Miqo'te race favours the females. In fact, did you know that in the 1.0 version of FF14, only female Miqo'te were playable? A lore excuse was given for this being that there were far more females born to Miqo'te than males. As a result, the males tended to remain with the tribes and groups, and the females would venture out. This lore reasoning was also applied to the Rogadin in 1.0, to which only the males were playable, and it also applies to the Viera and Hrothgar in the current game. But that about wraps up the Keepers of the Moon naming system. We move now to the Seekers of the Sun. The Seekers are a patriarchal society and is made up of many tribes. Each tribe is centered around a breeding male known as a Noon, who forms a harem around themselves for the sake of breeding and for the tribe's prosperity. When males are born into a tribe such as this, they are known as Tia, and once they come of age, can challenge and defeat the Noon in combat to assume his role, or they leave the community should they have desire to form their own tribe, or live independent. Though communities usually have only one Noon, larger ones are known to have multiple for the same purpose, but this depends on the size of that tribe. Seeker tribes in Eorzea number 26. An interesting story explores this. When the Miqo'te returned to Eorzea and started to learn the Eorzean language, the Seekers, upon realizing the Eorzean alphabet had 26 letters, took it as a divine sign. As such, the 26 tribes took a letter to represent themselves. Seeker names consist of their tribe's prefix letter, their given name, and their father's name, which is passed down to them. Let's go over the prefix letters first. Each tribe, as I mentioned, has a letter they took to represent themselves. As a result, when the tribes are mentioned in conversation, they are usually referred to as M tribe, G tribe, and so on. But at the same time, they also represent their tribe with an animal, which they call a totem. Finally, each letter has a specific sound, which is pronounced in subtle hisses given the Miqo'te race itself. Let's try to pronounce some of them. I apologise in advance, but I am no Miqo'te main. A would be ah, D would be de, G would be go, S would be so, Y would be yah, and Z would be Z. Let's take our very own Y'shtola as a seeker example. Her full name is Y'shtola Rule. Y for the tribe, Shtola as her given name, and Rule passed down from her father. You may have noted that other Miqo'te close to Y'shtola call her Shtola instead. Her sister Mithra is a prime example of one that does it regularly. Now let's look at Graha Tia. G for his tribe, Raha as his given name, and Tia indicating his status. Those close to him call him Raha. Kryle is a great example of one that does this often. Now, even though the tribes of the Miqo'te settled in a number of different lands, they can be seen scattered all over Eorzea, such as when new tribes are formed by young males. An example is a small Y tribe that settled in Dravania, until they likely left with the Sharlians during their exodus, which goes to partly explain why Y'shtola and her sister are from Sharlian. But that about does it for the Seekers of the Sun, and thus the naming conventions of both clans of Miqo'te. Honestly, there was so much more I could have put in. I highly recommend reading up on some of this, as the rest of it is quite fascinating. But here's a final interesting fact. Historical record shows the Miqo'te migrating to Eorzea over the ice bridges during the 5th Astral Era. However, they lived in Eorzea up to the 3rd Astral Era, but due to persecution by the Allagans, most left Eorzea to settle in southern Isambard. However, the oldest legend, which is still unconfirmed at this time, is that the Miqo'te descended from peoples who lived in Mericidia. Maybe, when Mericidia is finally added to FF14, we'll learn the full truth. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope this video was as entertaining and informative to you as it was for me to make. Be sure to leave a comment with your opinion on all things Miqo'te, and leave a like to show your support of the video. Finally, do consider subscribing, as I have a ton of videos yet to come. Thanks all, and now, as always, have a good one.